July 27, 1998. In East Milton, Santa Rosa County, Florida, Deputy Timothy Lynch responded to a disturbance at around 5:08 a.m. at 914 Cypress Street. Cynthia Campbell, aged 36 and a local attorney, was seen standing on her front porch with next-door neighbor Mearle Grim Jr. in cut-off jean shorts, while Grim asked permission to retrieve dogs he claimed were loose. Something in that morning encounter would link Grim to a murder hours later. What investigators uncovered next changed everything. By noon that same day, friends grew worried when Cynthia Campbell failed to show up for work at her law office in Milton. Her car, a white 1993 Honda Accord, was missing. Deputies returned to Cypress Street to check on her, but the house was locked. They noticed a small patch of blood near the front steps, faint but fresh. When they questioned neighbors, one name came up repeatedly: Mearle Grim Jr., the man seen talking to her earlier that morning. Investigators began to dig into his background, and it didn't look clean. Detectives learned that Mearle Grim Jr. lived just 2 houses down from Cynthia on the same quiet Milton Street. He was known around the neighborhood as polite, but odd, a man who mostly kept to himself. Deputies visited his property that afternoon. His truck was gone, but the back door stood slightly open. Inside, they found muddy footprints, a damp towel, and what looked like fresh scratches on the doorframe. Something violent had happened. But where was Cynthia Campbell? Later that evening, deputies issued a bolo for Cynthia's white Honda. Just before midnight, it was spotted abandoned near a wooded area off Garson Point Road, about 5 miles from her home. The driver's seat was pushed back, the keys missing, and a faint smear of blood was on the steering wheel. Detectives secured the scene and brought in K9 units to search the nearby woods. Within minutes, the dogs picked up a scent trail leading deeper into the brush. It was there they found something that made every officer freeze. Under a tangle of palmetto leaves, officers found a woman's shoe. And a few feet away, the lifeless body of 36-year-old Cynthia Campbell. She had been brutally beaten and strangled. Her jewelry was missing, but there were no signs of sexual assault. The discovery turned the quiet Santa Rosa County neighborhood into a crime scene. Detectives worked through the night, collecting fibers, footprints, and tire tracks. But one set of prints, leading away from the body, matched a familiar boot tread. The tread pattern matched a pair of work boots, owned by Grim Jr. Detectives obtained a search warrant for his house the next morning. Inside, they found a pile of burned clothing in a metal drum behind the shed. Nearby, a hammer lay half-cleaned, still showing faint traces of what looked like blood. Forensics teams collected samples for testing. Meanwhile, Grim was nowhere to be found. His truck had vanished overnight. Investigators feared he wasn't just hiding. He might be running. 2 days later, deputies tracked Grim's pickup to a rest stop off Interstate 10 near Tallahassee. The vehicle was empty, but inside were maps, camping supplies, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. Witnesses told police a man matching his description had been seen walking into nearby woods early that morning. A manhunt began, covering miles of dense forest and swamp. Helicopters circled overhead, while K9 teams followed faint trails. When officers finally spotted movement by a creek bed, they raised their guns. The man near the creek was Grim Jr., exhausted and barefoot, his clothes torn. He didn't resist when deputies surrounded him. As they cuffed him, Grim muttered, "I didn't mean for it to go that far." At the station, detectives began a long interrogation. Grim claimed he and Cynthia had argued over property boundaries and things got out of hand. But inconsistencies in his story piled up fast. Forensics were coming back, and the evidence on his hammer told a darker truth. Lab results confirmed the blood on Grim's hammer, and burned clothes belonged to Cynthia Campbell. Fibers from her carpet were also found on his boots. Investigators now had physical proof linking him to the murder. When confronted, Grim went silent, staring at the floor for nearly a minute before saying, "She wouldn't stop yelling." Detectives documented every word, every pause. The sheriff's office prepared charges for first-degree murder, but prosecutors soon uncovered a chilling detail from Grim's past that changed everything. Digging through old records, investigators discovered that Norman Grim Jr. had a violent history. In the 1970s, he'd been arrested in California for assaulting a woman during a burglary, but served only a short sentence. Later, in Alabama, he'd been questioned in another missing person case, though never charged. Neighbors who once thought of him as quiet now recalled strange behavior, late-night noises, and sudden temper flares. Detectives began to wonder, had Cynthia Campbell been his only victim, or just the one they caught him for? By early 1999, the case against Grim was airtight. The Santa Rosa County State Attorney's Office announced it would seek the death penalty, citing premeditation and extreme brutality. During pretrial hearings, prosecutors revealed how Grim had lured Cynthia outside under the pretense of fixing her fence, then attacked her when she turned her back. The courtroom was tense as her family listened in silence. But Grim's defense claimed mental illness, setting the stage for a bitter courtroom battle ahead. The trial opened in late 1999 at the Santa Rosa County Courthouse. Reporters filled the benches as prosecutors described Grim's actions in chilling detail. They showed crime scene photos, forensic reports, and replayed his taped confession. The jury listened as experts explained how Cynthia fought for her life. Grim sat motionless, eyes fixed on the floor. His defense argued diminished capacity, blaming medication and past trauma. But when Cynthia's mother took the stand, her words pierced through every argument in that room. Through tears, Cynthia's mother described her daughter as kind, hard-working, and the heart of their family. She looked directly at Grim and said, "You took everything from us." The courtroom went silent. Jurors avoided eye contact, some visibly shaken. After weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The judge agreed with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Norman Mearle Grim Jr. to death. But even behind bars, Grim's story was far from over. Grim was sent to Florida State Prison in Rayford, the same facility that houses the state's death row. For years, he maintained a cold silence, refusing interviews and appeals. Fellow inmates described him as withdrawn, spending hours staring at the wall of his cell. In 2012, prison staff reported several violent altercations involving Grim and other inmates, including one where he was stabbed in the arm during a dispute. But the real shock came nearly a decade later, when news broke that Grim had been attacked again, this time nearly killed. On October 28, 2025, 65-year-old Norman Mearle Grim Jr. was executed by lethal injection at the Florida Department of Corrections Florida State Prison, near Starker. He declined a last statement and had waived his appeals earlier in the month. His execution made Florida's total for the year 15, a record high since the death penalty was reinstated. His case is now closed. The man once living next door stands condemned and gone from this world.